Hello everyone, this is David again. I'm on Season 1, Episode 3, Born to the Purple. I just want to let everybody know, or the Babylon 5 fans know already, that this is not the purple versus green Drazi episode. That's probably the most heavily memmed thing in the Babylon 5 world. But this is a different episode. It starts off with a very attractive young lady dancing named Adira, and her name will become very important later on in the series. And she's a dancer at the local dance bar. And we find out that Jahar for the Narns and Lando Malari for the Centauri are negotiating trade concessions in the Euphrates sector. And Commander Sinclair wants these talks to go smoothly because Earth also wants some trade concessions there. Plus, like he said, it'll give folks back home reason to know that we are doing some good out here, that we're, helping to maintain the peace. Also, what happens too during this time is Michael Garibaldi finds unauthorized gold channel. Now, gold channel is only known to ambassadors and the highest ranking Earth members, such as Commander Sinclair, Lieutenant Commander Ivanova, and Michael Garibaldi. And use of those channels is only by express permission of Commander Sinclair. So he is worried that one of the other powers or somebody has hacked into the system and is intercepting gold channel communications, which would put security risk on Babylon 5, as well as these people could have they could have recorded conversations between ambassadors and their homeworlds. Now, that kind of reminds me of a current reference, I guess, and I've just read some of the articles about it, but I guess there's called a SCIF, Secured Communication Facility, and one of the things Donald Trump was getting criticized for was he would sit there on his cell phone. He wouldn't be in a secured facility where anybody driving by could literally listen in to the phone conversations of the President of the United States. Well, during this time, and most of the governments have this kind of a facility in their embassies and stuff like that because they want their communications to be secure. Well, what happened was, and we know this now through court records, is that the Russian ambassador to the United States, and this is real life, this is not Babylon 5 related, but he ended up, they were looking into some information on America's energy production. Well, this one guy, just kind of as a stooge, had no idea that he was being used, but he got and made it into a nice little notebook, a thing about America's energy production. Well, the FBI had gotten wind of it, and they took out the spine of the little notebook, and they put in listening devices down there. And someone took that information and put it into the Russian equivalent of their SCIF. And so the FBI, for over a year, I guess, was able to monitor all the communications between the Russian embassy and Moscow. So I thought that was kind of an interesting parallel. Another thing you'll find is this is the first mention of what's called a hot jala, which is, I guess, a Centauri drink. And they like it hot for whatever reason. And you'll sometimes see memes on that, so that's why I point that out. What we also find out is that the Centauri are a slave society, that they have various houses, and if you don't belong to the various houses, you don't have any status or class, you run the risk of becoming someone's slave. And I thought that was kind of interesting because in real life, the last country, I believe, to outlaw slavery was Mauritania, and that was, I want to say, in the late 80s, right around 85, or it might have been even 95. And so slavery is, but in a lot of what's called the Sahel, which is North Africa, the Sahara Desert region, a lot of those countries still, in fact, practice slavery to this day, because we all assume that slavery was done away with in 1850s or 1860s. Well, no, slavery has continued and continues on to this day. So it was interesting, a cultural reference, to find out that the Centauri have slaves, and that the owner of the slaves can be held liable for that slave's crimes. So if I was a slave of my cousin, okay, my cousin, or if I commit a crime, my cousin can be held culpable as well. So I thought that was interesting too. And what Adira, the dancer that I mentioned earlier, she was a slave to a guy named Trachis. And he's of a really interesting alien race, and he uses what they call a slaver's glove that has little electrodes, and if he catches Adira, or in this case, and in another case, someone who's trying to get in his way, if he holds it on your face, it's like putting hot electrodes and stuff on your skin, and is very uncomfortable. So he uses it a couple times on Adira. And what we find is Adira, and what her job was to do, was to entice Ambassador Molari, which she does, and she gets him home, or to his place, I should say. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. Coffee, the nectar of the gods. Anyway, one of the things that the Centauri do is they collect dirt and information on all the other houses. And Lando Molari, or the Molari family, I should say, has that information contained in what's called a purple file. And Lando Molari, I have no idea why, happens to have a copy of his on his ambassadorial workstation. Now, I would think you'd want to keep that stuff at home on your own personal computer, because why would you need it all the way out halfway across the galaxy if you're not going to be dealing with other Centauri of noble stature? But anyway, he's got these purple files on him, and he's got it ciphered, and Adira, using drugs and a mind-altering probe, gets his password, which is a triple cipher, wine, women, and song. And we also find out that the reason Trachis, this guy, and forgive me for jumping back here a little bit, he wants this information from Londo so that he can sell it to the Narn, because then the Narn can use that information to pull strings behind the scenes and get Centauri that are sympathetic to them elevated higher up into the Centauri government. So that's why Trachis is interested in this information. He wants to turn around and make a quick buck, basically. And to make Adira want to do this, because at first she kind of has feelings for Londo, even though it's a May-December relationship. She's May and he is December. And the reason why she would want to do this, because she's kind of getting feelings for this old, washed-up old Republican, as he calls himself, is because Trachis says, hey, when this is all done, as soon as I get the copies in my hand, I will give you your freedom. I'll release you from your contract, and you can become a free woman and go about your merry way. And one of the things that they also do here that you'll want to keep track of is one of the presents Londo gives Adira, because he's kind of falling. He gives her star laces, which are very pretty flowers. And he also gives her a very old brooch, I guess that's been in his family for generations. And so he gives it to this Adira. Now, it kind of has what? Why would he give this to Adira? You'll find out later in the episodes that Londo Mollari has 3 wives, and I guess according to Centauri law and custom, he's only allowed to have 3 wives. But he can have as many mistresses on the sides as he wants, I guess is how that works out, which has always kind of confused me. Can someone maybe from a Muslim country kind of educate me? My understanding is that according to traditional Muslim law and custom, that they can have up to 4 wives. But I know, because like the Prophet Muhammad, bless his soul, has had many more than 4 wives. And also some contemporary Muslims, like Osama bin Laden's father, I guess his mother, Osama's mother, was like bin Laden's 9th wife. And that what a lot of the very rich people do is they'll marry their 4 wives, and then at some point when they want a 5th wife, they'll just divorce one woman, keep her as a wife, though, or as a concubine, as we would call it, and then marry a 5th woman. And then when he's tired of this arrangement, or he wants to add another wife or concubine to his harem, he just divorces one of his other 4 wives and then brings in a 6th woman, and so on and so forth. And I guess this elder bin Laden has been married like 30 times or something like that. Well, of course, he's a billionaire, he can afford it, but I just thought that was interesting. Can someone who is Muslim comment in the comment section about, is that really accurate, or is my information completely wrong, and what are the rules in what we call these polyamorous relationships? So, let's see here. I'm trying to review my notes here. One of the things that kind of endears Londo Mollari is every once in a while, other than these stern old ambassador things, is that he tends to, every once in a while, he's got a soft spot about him. When he's taking Adira out on a date, he takes her to Fresh Air, which is the finest restaurant in all of Babylon. And she's worried the whole time of what happens if someone sees us. You know, I'm a slave and you're way, way high up in the hierarchy of the Centauri. What happens if someone sees... And he says, well, they'll say that Londo is a very lucky man. And of course, many people, including Commander Sinclair, see him at this restaurant with this woman. It's interesting when they're going through the negotiations about this Euphrates sector, and this kind of intercuts the scenes of this series. One of the things is Talia Winters is being taken to the Fresh Air restaurant with Commander Sinclair, and he asks about her opinions on the negotiations, because she's scanning both Jakar and Londo to make sure that, you know, their position is really their position, or are they making something up on the fly, or what the deal is. And her quip back to him was, I haven't sensed so many lies since I worked for the political bureau. That also tends to get memmed a lot, so pay attention to that. They flip on back to Garibaldi, a scene with Garibaldi, and he's still trying to track this, quote, gremlin that has cracked their gold channels. And he was able to figure out that the prefix, before he was booted out by an anti-security measure, he was able to figure out that the prefix number was from the Russian consortium. Now, I'm not sure, evidently Earth at this time was ruled by consortiums, where the most powerful of the states in this consortium gets to rule Earth in the Earth Senate, kind of like what the Security Council is to the current United Nations. You know, Russia is supposed to represent Asia, England and France get Europe, the United States gets the American continents, and China is the other Asian representative. So that's kind of my idea of how this current Earth government works in the Babylon 5 universe. And if anyone has any opinions on that, let me know as well. But that seems to be how the government is situated. They have a president and an Earth Senate, and then a consortium, then the individual state, in this case Russia, and then I'm going to assume you would have some sort of locality or whatever Russian government setup is at the time. I don't know. But anyways, that kind of clues him into who this little gremlin is who's hacked the gold channels, because who has access to the gold channels? Well, him, Commander Sinclair, and Ivanova. And as we already know, Ivanova is Russian in this series. So, clue right there. Adira, through some machinations, gets a hold of, or makes a copy of, Lando's purple files. And she takes the files and tries to meet up with Tracus at the Zocalo. At the last second, when she sees Tracus, she has a change of heart. I guess during another little vision in the Zocalo, this guy is giving his alien girlfriend some star laces, like what Lando had given to Adira, and that makes her have a change of heart, and so she runs off. Well, Tracus, of course, sees her runs off and gets really ticked off because he's already figured out, hey, she's flown the coop and she's got enough information to really make life difficult for me and could put me in jail for a long time. So he concocts a story that Adira is a slave, which we already know, and that she has working for Narn security. And he tells Londo this to get Londo to figure out where Adira is, and he secretly and quietly places a tracker on the back of Londo, figuring out that Adira will try and contact Londo somehow, and then he can use that information to get a hold of these purple files that he wants. So he places that onto there, and one of the scenes that we flip back to is during these negotiations for the Euphrates sector. Well, while this is all going on, Londo has given authority to Veer, his aide, to represent the Centauri, with the proviso and the admonition, and this is another heavily men theme, don't give away the homeworld. Okay? So Veer goes off, says he is the new representative for the Centauri, while Londo is out trying to chase and track down Adira. Well, Jakar gets incensed by this, this underling has been sent to negotiate, so he gives Kodath authority to negotiate for the Narn. And again, with the proviso that's been heavily mended, just don't give away the homeworld. So I thought, that's another little mem you're going to want to pay attention to. And forgive me, I get dry mouth very easily due to blood pressure pills, so I drink coffee. Otherwise, you're going to have to sit here and listen to me smack my lips every 2 to 3 seconds, and only gets you so far before someone shuts you off. So Londo confirms through his computer that someone has tracked his files, just as Tracus said that Adira had tracked. So he now knows the entire scenario. He enlists the help of Commander Sinclair, and Commander Sinclair does so only if Londo agrees to his compromise on the Euphrates sector so that Earth can get its concessions in as well. And so Londo agrees. And so he and Sinclair end up down in one of the bars that Adira used to dance in, and Londo basically holds up a Centauri ducat, gold ducat, to say, hey, give me some information. Where is Adira located? Well, Adira has since slipped away undercover, and her friend has booked passage for her on a place out of the Babylon 5, off the Babylon 5 station. And so, basically, through bribery, Londo learns the location of Adira Turi. Now, Londo, not knowing, of course, he's been bugged and being tracked by Trackus, gives away the location to Trackus. Flipping back to Garibaldi, trying to track down who has accessed the gold files. And this one I'm going to have to caution you a little bit. You might see me start and stop because this one got real personal for me. Ivanova basically has a deathbed forgiveness confession between her and her dad. Now, why I say this is so personal to me is because about 2 years before this episode aired on TV, my own dad died of basically of cigarette smoking. When I was a little kid, he had a heart attack, damaged his heart. He quit smoking, quit drinking, lost about 70 pounds, and was able to go, but the damage had already been done. And in 1991, about 2 years before this episode, he died. Very quickly and very painlessly, so I'm glad for that. But this episode made me run in, and because I was in nursing school at the time, run in and call my mom, and out of the blue ask her what my last conversation with my dad was. And through talking back and forth, we realized that it was during the Super Bowl, America's biggest sporting event. My dad was driving me, I believe he was driving me down to my sister's house to watch it. And it was the Super Bowl that Whitney Houston sang the American national anthem. And why that's important is because it's widely regarded as one of the best renditions, if not, in fact, the best rendition of the American national anthem ever. So if you have time, as a little side search, go ahead and search up, if you're not from the United States and you want to know about our national anthem, go search up Whitney Houston National Anthem. And that's basically was the last conversation between me and my dad. And so this episode turned out to end up very personal for me. So basically Garibaldi figures out that her dad is dying. If he did not die at the end of the call, we don't know. But he kind of sort of softly confronts Ivanova about, look, if this ever happens again, just let me know beforehand so I'm not, spinning my wheels. And at some point, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here for you, kind of thing. And she kind of says, well, I'm on duty now. I'll talk to you later, kind of thing. During this deathbed confession, we do learn some important information about Ivanova and her character. We learn that her brother, and we learn his name later as Gagne, was killed during the Earth-Minbari War. And that because of her mom's suicide and her brother Gagne being killed, her dad was very much against her joining Earth Force. And of course we learn that she did join Earth Force against his wishes, and that obviously is a lot of cause of friction between the two of them. The scene ends flashing back kind of to Londo. He gets his purple files back after knocking Trackus cold, and Sinclair threatens Trackus, and I can imagine that conversation because Londo says he can be a very scary man. He basically gets the slay contract from Trackus, and it ends basically with Londo giving this contract to Adira, basically setting her free. Londo wants Adira to move in and settle down and play house with him, but Adira basically says, the wounds are too fresh, but at some point in the future when things have settled down, I'll come back to you. Now, I don't want to give too much of a spoiler alert, but Adira Turi's coming back turns out to be a very major event in the Babylon 5 universe. And I'm not going to say what it is just yet. I'm going to have to let you guys stew on that one for a little while. But having lost now both of my parents, this episode got real personal for me because, like I said, it was only about 2 years after my dad passed away that Ivanova goes through the same thing. So, down in the comments, to those of you who have watched this episode, how has this episode changed you at all or affected you at all? I'd be really interested in knowing and hearing about it. And also, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Hope you'll have a good rest of your day. Might as well show you what the bottom half of that shirt says.